Today being the last Thursday in the month of March, we'll be rounding off our WOW series, Women at Work series. It's not the end of the discussion for women at work, but it's the end of this series. And we're rounding off with a very interesting topic, which is burnout in high achieving women. So high achieving women are defined by their consistency, and that shows up in the way they deliver, the way they anticipate issues before they arise and take ownership and stabilize complex environments. Now, these traits rarely exist in isolation. They show up in all areas of life. The same individual who leads at work is often also coordinating at home, managing schedules, anticipating needs, holding the family structure together, and maintaining continuity in ways that are not always visible but are consistently relied upon. And this creates a dual layer of responsibility. Professional excellence on one side, domestic orchestration and management on the other. Over time, these layers will compound, and what appears externally as strength and reliability is usually supported internally by sustained effort, continuous cognitive engagement, and very little true recovery. This exactly is where burnout begins to take shape. Not as a sudden event, but as a gradual depletion within these women who have been operating at a high level for an extended period of time. From an occupational health perspective, burnout is defined as a state of emotional exhaustion, reduced efficacy, and increasing detachment from work. It is also recognized by the World Health Organization as an occupational phenomenon caused by chronic workplace stress that has not been successfully managed. The key phrase here is that chronic. Burnout does not come from the occasional pressure. It develops with high demand being sustained without adequate recovery. In many organizations, these women are consistently placed in roles where they are expected to absorb pressure. They become the individuals who step in when the situations escalate. They are trusted to deliver under tight timelines, to manage complexity, and to maintain standards when the systems are strained. Gradually, this very reliability becomes embedded in company culture. You find that the workflow begins to expand around them, expectations are increased incrementally, additional responsibilities are assigned because they can be managed. And because these individuals are capable, they will continue to deliver, which now creates a reinforcing cycle. Their capability leads to increased demand, and increased demand requires sustained effort. Sustained effort in turn reduces recovery time, and reduced recovery gradually erodes that very same resilience. The process is rarely visible in its early stages. In the early stages, you find that performance will remain high, deadlines are met, the teams will function, but internally, that cost is accumulating. Psychologically and physiologically, prolonged stress affects multiple systems. Sleep becomes less restorative, cognitive fatigue will increase, emotional regulation requires much more effort, and as time goes by, all this creates anxiety, it reduces concentration, and even there are physical symptoms that will attest to this, such as headaches and elevated blood pressure. At an organizational level, the early indicators of burnout are often very subtle. Decision making may become more effortful, engagement may begin to fluctuate, enthusiasm for additional responsibility may even decrease. And these shifts are sometimes interpreted as a change in attitude or motivation. But in reality, they reflect that capacity limits have been reached. Those individuals are unable to cope. And like we will say in Nigeria, body no be firewood. In many environments, workload is not actively measured. The distribution of the responsibility evolves organically rather than intentionally. You find that the high performers become default escalation points, and they tend to absorb complexity that the system itself has not been designed to manage efficiently. This uneven distribution of pressure is then created, and some individuals will operate within sustainable limits. Some are in a constant state of overextension. Over time, that imbalance becomes difficult to sustain, and this is where burnout shows up. So burnout should not be approached as an individual well-being issue to be managed through resilience training, personal coping strategies. No. Remember that burnout is a signal. a signal that demand and capacity are misaligned. At board and senior leadership level, several questions should become important when you notice burnout. How is workload measured across the team? Who carries the crisis responsibility when systems are under pressure? Are high performers consistently absorbing additional demand? Is recovery time built into the way the work is structured, or is it left to the individual discretion? Without clear visibility of these factors, burnout risk will continue to remain largely unmanaged. The organizational response can be both practical and measurable. One, capacity modeling is a way to approach it. Understanding how much work exists within the system and how that work is distributed allows an organization to identify their points of sustained overload. Let there be clear delegation structures. This way, you reduce the tendency for responsibility to accumulate around a small number of individuals. Another way is to protect recovery time, whether through realistic, scheduling or reduced after hours communication or structured downtime following high intensity periods. This way, you will allow physiological and psychological systems reset. Another thing to note is that leadership behavior is very critical. When senior leaders are able to model constant availability and continuous output, what it does is that it sets an implicit standard for the rest of the organization. But when they model boundaries and recovery, it legitimizes sustainable performance. Now, am I implying that companies should reduce ambition or output? No. What this ensures is that performance can be sustained over time. High achieving women represent a significant proportion of leadership capability within modern organizations. So when they are supported by well-designed systems, they are able to contribute at a consistently high level. When the systems rely on continuous overextension, performance will eventually decline, not due to the lack of ability, but due to depletion. Burnout in this context is very predictable, and when something is predictable, you can actually design for it. Organizations should move away from reactive well-being initiatives and towards proactive performance design. They should also recognize that sustainable excellence requires not only capability, but also capacity. And protecting capacity allows high performers continue to operate at a level that made them valuable in the first place. Remember that burnout is not a personal failure. It is an operational signal, and any organization that responds to that signal with intelligent design will retain both its performance and its people in the long term.